progress.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the regular monthly meeting of the Dayton Stormwater Committee, Wednesday, May 26, 2021. We're in the Old Town Hall upper level meeting room. In compliance with the governor's COVID-19 orders, masks and social distancing will be enforced. This is a remote participation Zoom meeting. It is a public meeting being video and audio recorded for cable broadcast and internet. Posting on www.dayton-mass.gov and YouTube. I should correct that. We are not video recording, are we? We're just doing audio.
We're just doing audio.
Okay, thank you. Zoom meeting number 841-4183-9839, password 472199, call-in number 929-205-6099. Please rise to pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item is we're going to do roll call. And since we have some visitors present, please state your name and what position you hold in the town of Dayton. Mr. Pius.
Present.
No, Mr. Pius, state your name and your affiliation.
Thomas Fires, Board of Health.
Todd Pelling, Stormwater Agent.
James Aguirre, Building Commissioner.
Lisa California, Conservation Agent.
Timothy F. Ryan's planning board chairman. Barry, superintendent.
I'm Mike Mullen, town administrator.
Bill Fournette, Conservation Commission.
Nancy Goulart, representative for Board of Selectmen to the Stormwater Committee. And could I have your name, please? Thank you.
And just for the record, there's only one microphone in the room. It's on this laptop, so when you're speaking, that microphone has to pick you up. So if that's for everybody, make sure you speak up. Thank you.
Did you? Excuse me.
Yes, my name is Brian Dunn. I'm a principal with MDL Land Development and Permitting in Greenville, Massachusetts.
Thank you. Roz, did you get their names?
I did.
Okay, thank you. We've got a public hearing coming up at 1:30, so Ross, if you just kind of watch the clock and give me the high sign so we don't miss that time.
No.
Agenda item 5A, new business, review, discuss, act, request for extension of stormwater permits for 903 Tremont and 624 Middle Street. Mr. Aguirre?
Yes, so as we know, this project came before us some time ago, and there's a 6-month start deadline as issued as a condition of our permit. The applicants have asked for extension from that or waiver, whichever the committee so chooses, because there have been some delays on their side. They acknowledge the delays, and unfortunately, they couldn't give us a hard date as to when they would start, but they asked for this board to consider an extension.
Do you have a recommendation?
Is this an open meeting?
Excuse me. Yes, it is.
Okay, for the stormwater?
Yes, it is. Could I have your name for the record, please?
Okay.
Oh, didn't recognize Mrs. Bosalek.
I couldn't get on Zoom, so I
Okay. Have a seat. Sorry, Mr. Aguirre.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with granting an extension to this project.
Should we give them a solid extension, and if they can't make that, they can come back again?
That would be commendable, yes.
So is 6 months the minimum we should be looking at? If they don't know actually how much time they need?
6 months brings us into the winter season. So I think if they can't start by that date, they won't be starting anyhow. So if we give them a hard date of 6 months from today, that would be fine. Unless there's any other input.
Does anybody else wish to comment on the request for an extension, suggestions, whatever? Questions?
I'll say that no rules have changed since then, so I don't see any issue with extending it.
I don't either. I think we should issue
6
an
months?
extension, yeah.
Yeah, that would put you in end of November.
Well, I'll make a motion at this time to approve the request for an extension limited to 6 months of the stormwater permits for 903 Tremont and 624 Middle Street.
I'll second that.
We have a motion in the second discussion.
Is that 6 months from today or 6 months from the expiration date?
Maybe 6 months from the expiration.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Was there already an expiry?
No, but I didn't know if this was 6 months is from today or from when it's set to expire. That's
Do
what
we know what the expiry date is?
It was issued on November 4th of 2020. So 6 months would put it to, they had to start within 6 months of the stormwater permit, so you're talking, that would have been May 4th, so it did expire.
20 days ago.
So,
May 4th.
so 6 months from May 4th.
Sure, that's good.
So I think we need a friendly amendment on the motion to allow that not to expire and extend it. Because it's already expired.
The Tremont Street one has expired. How old is the 624 Middle when they added that?
Same day.
Same date.
Oh, was it the
We
same?
issued our permit on the same
Oh,
day.
okay. All right. Then I'll make a friendly amendment to that and make it effective today so it doesn't expire.
No, it already has expired.
Oh, it expired.
So it'll be 6 months from the date it expired, which brings us to
Right.
November 4th.
20.
So, for a friendly amendment, what we need to say is what you've already said, and then it will be,
6 months from the date of expiration.
no, I'm, actually, you know what? I'm gonna ask you to withdraw the second, and I'm gonna ask you to withdraw the
Okay.
motion. We're gonna come back to that. All right, so I need a motion to grant how many day extension to get it from the 4th to today, the 26th?
22 days.
All right, I need a motion to grant an extension for this project for 22 days from May the 4th to May the 26th, because the project, the permit expired on May the 4th. So that's the first thing I need.
I'll withdraw my original motion and I'll make that motion to extend it for 22 days from the expiration date.
So May 4th, it expired. We're now,
I'll second.
thank you. And so now we're going to give them a Mr. Pius, temporary extension. So this is Grassy, it'll be temporary extension of 22 days. Discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor, Mr. Pius? Mr. Pilling?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Mr. Excuse me, Mr. Rhines?
Aye.
Mr. Ferry?
Aye.
Mr. Burnett?
Aye.
Ms. Goulart, aye. Now would you make the motion for the 6 months? Please.
I'll make a motion to extend the request of Clearway Energy for a 6-month period from today's date. That's it.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. Mr. Pius?
Aye.
Mr. Pilling?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Mr. Rhines?
Aye.
Mr. Ferry?
Aye.
Mr. Burnett?
Aye.
Mrs. Goulart, aye. Thank you. The next item is MLB Land Development Request for Information. this is not going to be a presentation. We had a request from MLB to come before the Stormwater Committee. However, you can tell by the length of this agenda that there isn't time for a presentation. So I said that we would have time allowed for representatives from MBL, Land Development, to come in, address the committee, ask some questions, and they're going to be on the agenda for the next regular meeting. So would you like to address either one of you address the Stormwater Committee? And if you don't mind, if you could come up closer to this so that the public, the camera's not on, but we want them to hear your voice.
Okay, so I've already stated, but I'm Tracy Dewar, I'm a civil engineer with Land Development. We have a client that's looking at potentially doing a subdivision on Brook Street.
He's,
Let me go.
It's okay.
he reads lips.
Yes, it's okay to remove your mask.
Okay.
Every lips.
So he's looking to do a 4-lot residential subdivision on Brook Street. The existing site constraints make it really difficult to meet all the stormwater standards. And so we kind of wanted to meet informally with the planning board and review to get an idea of what would be allowed, what wouldn't be, is this a definite go or no go, before we go to full design. The site's on Brook Street. It's right next door to 461 Brook Street. And I don't know if anybody knows the area. We've had it surveyed and the wetlands delineated recently. There's a large area of, I have plans, I don't know. Of bordering vegetated wetlands in the back of the site. The front of the site has a very small pocket, but it's right at the road of isolated vegetated wetlands, which are under the jurisdiction of the Concom here. The issue we're having with stormwater management is that the elevation of the wetlands is actually higher than the elevation of Brook Street right in front of it, making it absolutely impossible to catch stormwater at the front of our site, treat it, and discharge it above the wetland elevation. So we were looking at how can we, because under the state, we're not subject to the stormwater standards. We understand we are here. So we were trying to get an idea of what we could do to best treat the stormwater. This would probably be a small cul-de-sac, 400 to 500 feet long, that we could probably catch most of it if we were allowed to do a basin in one of the lots, which would be a planning board waiver that we discussed, because under the planning board regulations, it's supposed to be on its own lot, drainage. But then we'd still have another 150-foot section of road that goes to Brook Street that we can't catch and treat because we're already lower than the wetlands elevation.
Is this on the south side of Brook Street?
Yeah.
And is it after the last house on the left before you get to the Somerset Water Department property?
Before that. It's, I just don't know.
But the sloping land,
If you're heading west from the property that you, water.
okay,
There's 2 houses down on the left. There's a field there now.
It's right after Mr. Everett Chico's house,
okay, all right,
same side.
okay.
House on the left.
The total land area that is not proposed for development, I understand because of the wetlands. All right, and how much of it do you think is buildable?
The majority of it, the bordering vegetated wetlands, is pretty close to the back property line. It's that front isolated vegetated wetlands that's going to be the issue. And the high point of the site is actually close to that vegetated wetlands in the back. It goes from the high point down to that, but then most of it goes towards the isolated wetlands in Brook Street.
So as you drive west on Brook Street and you're going towards the land that, before you get to Mill, you're going up a hill. It kind of dips, but then you start up a hill. Does that hill curve around and that's the higher part that goes down behind this property? Does
I
that?
thought I knew where everything
It's where the
was
power
until you
easement is.
people started talking. Can I see the?
The overhead water.
There's Brooks.
This is 461.
I put it up on the TV.
What's this?
Yeah.
It's up on the TV screen.
No, this.
Oh, the sidewalk.
It's this lot right here.
This, 0?
So who's this abutter here over here?
There's also one at the front of the property, and so along the road too, no, along the road.
Along the road, yeah, so there's a little isolated wetland right in front of the site. And then there's a culvert that goes to the wetlands that's shown across the street now.
It would be right here. Is that under power lines? So there's power lines running through here, and this is what she's saying is wetlands. Okay.
So in that area, the road, like right around elevation 13, and our wetlands, our isolated wetlands, is part of the site creep up to elevation 15.
Okay, I'm still back to my question about buildable land.
Most of the site's buildable, the isolated wetlands at the front of the site's roughly 5,000 square feet.
Do the power lines go through that property?
They do.
You consider that buildable?
You can put your lot in it, you just can't put your house or septic system in it. We have started correspondence with National Grid's legal and easement department. They would have to review it too.
I would agree with that statement. I did have a question, Tracy. You had said there was a culvert there. So
Yeah.
if there's a culvert, you have that isolated wetland,
Yeah.
is it truly isolated?
Well, that was kind of my connection, my issue too. It goes across the street, which appears to be another isolated wetlands that, I mean, that's kind of beyond our scope of work, but I think it's still in essence isolated. It's just a hydrologic connection under the road. Not that I can see from any kind of GIS, DEP hydrologic connections later, there's nothing.
Mr. Ferry,
Yeah, there is a thing. So further to the east of the isolated wetlands across the street, I have a pipe that crosses Brook Street back.
Okay.
I have the satellite here, you can see the asphalt actually where the pipe was replaced. You zoom in a little bit.
That's as close as I
Right
can.
where the cursor is now is where my pipe crosses. So it brings it back into the drain system that goes right to the Saggy River.
So this here is draining the Saggy.
Okay, so even if it's bordered.
This looks pretty wet here.
Because of a local reason, the isolated filtrated the border. We're not trying to get any exemption from that. But it was flagged on site as isolated, that's all I mean.
so what kind of waivers are you looking for from stormwater regulations?
So from planning board, the issues would be drainage being on its own lot, you know, with the 30-foot frontage. We would be looking to have a basin just before the isolated wetland on our, but it would be on one of the lots as an easement.
Is that what the planning board is requiring?
That's in their regulations, yes.
Okay, is that an infiltration basin?
We haven't designed it yet, but that would be the intent, and that seemed like that would be a variance for Board of Health just to have an above ground infiltration basin.
What else are you looking for?
The outlet invert of our drainage basin being 6 inches above the wetlands. We can probably design, like I said, our basin to handle the majority of our proposed roadway. But that last 150-foot section, there's nothing we can do because we have to tie into Brook Street at the elevation of Brook Street. We can't change Brook Street. Brook Street is lower than the wetlands elevation. You know, so given that this is 4 lots, it's not, you know, we're looking to maybe that last section to not treat it. It wouldn't be subject under the state. But there's no way to catch it or treat it or do anything because we're already lower than the wetlands elevation.
So when I say infiltration basin, that means water is not going to be standing there. Is that what your understanding is? Because I'm trying to picture this.
If it's an infiltration basin, that we would have to prove that it dries out within 72 hours. Or, you know, our overflow would be piped somewhere, you know, either to the wetland at a lower rate than it is now. That's what's allowed under the DEP handbook.
Okay, obviously, we're going to need additional information because I'm thinking of this, and we define detention, retention, and infiltration basins. And when I think infiltration, I think dry practically all the time, okay? I realize there's timing involved with drainage. However, that whole area is so wet, we don't want it to become, it doesn't drain within 72 hours or whatever, and it's an additional breeding ground for mosquitoes.
Yeah.
So that's something we have to think about. So that's something you're gonna have to come back with us with more detail on, how you're gonna design that basin so that it definitely is gonna work. And if you're planning to discharge into the, whether it's the wetlands or whatever, we'd need those details too.
Yeah, I mean, if this was something that, was understandable that we'd have to have this basin on somebody's lot as an easement, I mean, the lot would still meet all its other requirements. We would do a full drainage analysis report, demonstrate the drawdown within 72 hours based on test pit data and demonstrating that the soils in that area. I mean, we would do all the calculations that are required under the DEP.
Okay, what else do you have?
That's most of it.
So it's basically,
It's
the regulations you're looking for waivers on deal with drainage.
all drainage.
Okay, so we're gonna need, obviously, much more details. To the best of my recollection, we haven't ever waived stormwater requirements, okay? So in order for this to happen, you would have to present significant, I'll say, evidence, data, plans, whatever. And also, when are you gonna meet with the Concom?
We haven't done a design.
Okay.
Like I said, we're just trying to get feedback on.
Okay. All right, so you've met with planning.
Yeah.
And planning has talked to you about the drainage and on lot.
They
Okay.
pretty much said they would agree with the contract here.
Okay, so what I'm saying to you is we're gonna need a lot more information because again, I don't remember waiving stormwater regs. And the reason is that EPA, everyone talks DEP, that's pretty much who we deal with locally. However, EPA still has primacy in Massachusetts. And EPA has clearly stated that if a community allows, let's say we granted you a waiver to something in our stormwater rules, regs, bylaw, whatever, EPA were to look at it and determine it was clearly a violation of the original information that was submitted when we submitted our MS4 notice of intent and all that good stuff. It would be the town that gets fined, not the developer. So we are extremely careful. So I think you're gonna have to do more work.
And like I said, when we go through the design and do all this, if we can demonstrate that last 100 feet that goes over, if our post is still less than our creek, and we're meeting all other DEP standards, then the waiver essentially would be local ones as far as being on its own law and an easement thing, and those aren't things that are related to EPA.
Except that we also coordinate with, obviously, the planning board said they've issued a statement. They said talk to stormwater. And now that you're here before stormwater and you know what we're looking for, we're also going to say to you, what does Concom say? Because we try to work together on these things, and we're certainly not going to waive anything that affects anything Concom has done.
We really did try to set up an informal building with a couple of people from each department, and we were told that couldn't happen. So we were done separately. But, I have a working relationship with these parents and definitely meet with her. But, she's definitely, understanding that this is
Okay. So the reason that I asked everybody to state their name and what they represented is that this committee is made up of just about every department in town that is involved with, whether it's building or whatever. And that way we have a rep from the planning board, so obviously he knows their position. We have somebody from Concom and highway and building and health, board of health. So we try to, at this level, take into consideration everybody's concerns. So that's why I'm saying to you, before you start designing and drawing and everything, I think you need to talk to Concom also. And then put together some kind of presentation based on that, because you'll have all the information you need. Because obviously, if there is something in the Concom regs that also stormwater is involved with, we are certainly not going to do anything to change anything that they may tell you.
Understand, and we're looking at their bylaws,
Okay. Okay, that's fine. All right.
Lisa, have you been out there?
No, actually, I'm gonna have to recuse myself from this project because I work for MDL as LSD. So I won't even be able to look at this one.
Okay. We'll handle it.
Okay, we're at 1:30 and we've got to go to that hearing. So if you have any other questions, feel free to get back to Mrs. Grassi. And just tell her what the concerns are and she'll get the questions out to the appropriate member of the committee. And so that we can, give you information.
A little more in the design, but we don't have to formally submit the planning yet or Concom before we come back here.
No, what we're going to be looking for is why would we consider waiving any of the stormwater bylaws? The bylaw, and regulations.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Mr.
You
Tilly.
get elevations on site existing already,
Yeah,
establish that in the outline. You would have that with plan with a sketch showing where you're thinking about putting the road and the houses, just so we can see conceptual. I think then we can talk about it. We're not seeing the elevations we're seeing, is all we've got is an assessment. So something like that as a preliminary form would make it much easier for this board to look at.
I agree.
I
Say the same.
submitted that, I was told.
We actually trying to do that.
Yeah.
Just trying.
You see the agenda?
Yeah, no problem.
We can't act on anything today on this.
Yeah.
All right, so get back to us, we'll get you on a future meeting and we'll all right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Madam Chair, at this time, I'm going to recuse myself from the next agenda item.
Okay.
Public hearing, I have a relative who is a direct butter.
Are they live, Mr. Tilly?
They are all here. I don't know if they've all named themselves. You can't read the screen from that far away.
It says Marissa Signal.
Yeah, Dan Von Allman from Clearway, David Cowan from Clearway, Marissa from Signal Energy, and Tim Sullivan from TRC, and Tom Daniels from Williams Street Solar / TRC is here. And Ryan somebody. Ryan, if you can change your name to something more than that and state what company you're from, it would be appreciated.
Yes, I'm with Meridian.
Recorded. What's that?
Meridian Associates.
Yeah, you can rename yourself so it's there, because this is the official record being recorded. So that's
Yeah, I just did. Yeah.
Yep.
Committee members, are we good to go?
Just a minute.
Okay.
I know you can't see us, but hold on.
Yeah. Trying to guess by the sound.
If I may, Mrs. Chairman, just as a brief aside, Rich Riccio is here from Field Engineering. I believe, Rich, are you here for the 924 Middle Street?
Yeah, they had told me it was at 1:30, but I saw your agenda started at 1.
Yeah, we already voted to grant your extension for 6 months from today. So
Okay.
you don't need to hang out.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Todd. Have a good
Thanks,
good
Rich.
afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, so we're set to go. Dan, you want to begin?
Yeah, thanks so much. Laura. So I thought it would be helpful to just give, I'm getting a, I thought I would just give a quick update on kind of where we are in the process and recent conversations that we've had with members of the town. And so earlier this week, we provided an updated plan set and summary email of changes to our stormwater and access road design to Mr. Pilling and Ms. Caledonia as part of ongoing conversations that we're having around the Concom approval process. So as folks on the committee may recall, last time we talked about the intention to try and go May 20th Concom agenda so that we can move our projects through an amendment approval or general approval in that forum, and then come back at this meeting with that approval in hand. So because some of those conversations and design revisions took longer than we anticipated, and that it took a little bit of extra time to make sure that we were getting them right, we were not able to appear at that May 20th Concom agenda, and are currently working collaboratively with Ms. Caledonia and Mr. Pilling to address a couple open items of clarification, both in process and in design, in terms of our next steps. And our intention is to move through that Concom approval process as quickly as possible, but in a manner that's still being specifically determined based on some open questions that we're working through around our design. And specifically that's around a point of confusion on our side about the need for infiltration trenches in the wetland area that are being removed. And also a clarifying question with the around the exact boundaries of the road widening there, so that we can make sure that we're getting the impacts within that wetland and vernal pool buffer area exactly correct. So it's going to take us a couple more business days to run that through all the way. And, you know, we had a conversation with Mr. Pilling and Ms. Caledonia this morning. Want to reiterate our appreciation for making yourselves available for that. And that those meetings are extremely helpful for us to gain clarity on making sure we're following the right path forward. And just kind of provide the committee a general update that we're still working through some of these questions, and that we have every intention to try and get ourselves either on the scheduled June Concom meeting agenda, or if that's already full, supporting the need for a special Concom meeting, given the kind of massive workload that Lisa and her colleagues are working through right now, to try and keep this project moving forward. So that's the general update on where we're at. You know, apologies that the plan sets came over later than we intended. We're trying to take the extra time to make sure that we get it right and get you guys sets that are accurate. But at this point, I think it would be helpful for us to make sure that we're proceeding on kind of an efficient and correct path to one, complete the discussion with the town fire chief. And Mr. Aguiar, I copied you on that request as well. And then also from the Stormwater Committee more directly, make sure that we're fully aligned in terms of stormwater treatments in and around this wetland protection area in terms of flows moving across around the access road in that area, and that we're kind of fully aligned on the approach there as it relates to, you know, prior planning board approvals and the current decision. So, you know, I think our request at this point is to continue the discussion offline and ideally get a response, Todd, after you've had a chance to fully digest the plan sets that were provided, on kind of your support of the stormwater treatment kind of across the site more generally and specifically in that area, so that we know that, you know, we're okay to lock in a plan set that's going to go to the Concom and then be brought back to the Stormwater Committee for final approval. We're just trying to avoid a situation where we provide the Concom a plan set that the Stormwater Committee has additional comments on. So that's, you know, I'm sorry that was a little long-winded, but that's the update on where we are today, and happy to kind of discuss any questions that the committee has live, or talk through any questions or comments on process to help kind of guide us through next steps here.
Daniel, I thought I heard you mention the name after Mr. Pilling, Tom Pyers. I'm having trouble hearing you because it's a strange tone that's coming out. Tom Pyers isn't involved in this at all. He recused himself. It may have been Tom Ferry you're thinking about, but Tom Pyers from the Board of Health is not involved with the project. So I just want to correct that. He is a member of the Stormwater Committee, but he actually recused himself and stepped out. So just for the
Yep.
record, Tom Pius is not involved.
I think I must have either misspoken or it didn't come through clearly. Yeah, just to be clear from our side, not expecting any feedback from Mr. Pyers. So the folks that were kind of actively engaged in discussions with are Mr. Pilling and Ms. Caledonia from the Conservation Commission. And then I reached out to Fire Chief McGee and copied Mr. Aguiar on that note about some clarifications that we're seeking on the access road width. But yeah, appreciate the confirmation and clarification, and yeah, don't need anything from Mr. Pyers at this time.
Okay, before we get to that 2 emails that came in, Mr. Pilling, did you have anything on the plans or whatever you've been working on?
Well, yeah, I just want to say that it only came in like 48 hours ago, so I haven't really gone through them entirely. But as I read the email, I want to point out that a couple things. They put in their letter that a third-party review by GZA for stormwater was completed back in 2017 and 2018. GZA, as I pointed out in the letter back in December, the plans and information were reviewed with respect to the Dayton Planning Board regs, Dayton zoning bylaw, and general engineering. They did not review it for stormwater. So I just want to make it very clear, they never reviewed it for stormwater. Also, you got a statement in here that this design, that you're now trapping the water in the vernal pool on the south side of the road instead of coming across. The original design had it going across the road, and now you're not having it going across the road, and you're saying this is consistent with the original approved designs. At some point you had an original design, and then you decided to let the water go over the road, and now you're not letting it go over the road, so I'm getting a little confused. The other thing that really caught my eye here is it appears you haven't done any survey work out here. You have no elevations anywhere in this vicinity. Like, it was all flown aerially from like 10 years ago and nothing, no survey was ever done. Is that correct? He's basically saying he wants to go in now and shoot some grades where the vernal pool is to establish what the road grade is so that we don't raise the road. But and is that why on sheet 802 there's no spot grades anywhere like I've been asking for? Like, there's no survey?
Meridian has not done site survey. We've been utilizing the existing base plan from the previously approved set.
Right, and that set refers to the set before it. So, and what was that based on? Is that aerial survey or was it actual on the ground survey?
We didn't do the survey, so that would, TRC would have to answer that question. But the reason why the notes are the way they are currently is because the detail in the notes talk about matching the existing grades on the road. So I didn't want to put spot grades on the road and have them be incorrect. It was better, in our opinion, to just make it clear that the proposed road treatment has to match the existing grades. So whether at some point during construction, the existing grades of the current road would have to be established. So that way the proposed road, when it's laid down, matches that.
No, I understand that, but you're going from a road that's what, 8 or 9 feet wide, those of us that walk the site, to one that's going to be 16 feet wide. So I was concerned that we are raising the grade in some parts of it, which I'm not saying I have a problem with. But ultimately, the drainage design now, you are now in the vernal pool holding back 550,000 gallons of water in that vernal pool. That seems like we might want to analyze that as a pond to see if the pond is overtopping instead of just dumping the water there saying it's not going anywhere. That's a lot of water going into that vernal pool.
The initial watershed plan in the TRC analysis does show that area draining east to west, that subcatchment. So we wanted to stay consistent with that initial assessment. And we verified in the field that there was no hydraulic connection between the southern and northern.
In a 100-year storm event? In a 100-year storm event, it doesn't connect?
Well, according to again, if we go back to the survey data that we do have, the grades on the road do appear to be higher than the grades to the west of that wetland. So it would make sense that the water would drain to the west and southwest before it drains over the road. Given the existing contours that are there, to the left side, you have an elevation of 260. On the road and just north of the road, there is an elevation of 262. So we're using that existing survey data to draw that conclusion as to that's where the water would shed.
Just a point of clarification, because this is going to be available for the public on YouTube. Can we stop using the term road? Because people are going to think we're talking about William Street. If we're talking about the access drive, which is the farm road that goes to Timbuktu, let's call it the access drive, please.
Understood.
All right, so if I turn to page 802 and look at the access drive, in all the contours there isn't a single label on anything there to know what elevation you're talking about, to know which way is up or down or whatever. So that's why we've been asking for this blow up to have spot grades and elevations on it so we can see what we're looking at. Look at your blow up on sheet 802 and tell me what that tells you.
No, I see what you're pointing at. And yes, that's correct. And I can add contour labels on all the, in fact, they are there for some reason. They just, I don't know, they didn't display, but they're there. But yeah, I see your point. But as far as adding spot grades, that was what drove our decision not to add proposed spot grades. I don't want to pin it down to a number and then have it be wrong. It would be more accurate for us to specify that the existing grades need to be matched. Whatever the original survey was done, whether on the ground, aerial, whatever it may be, it wouldn't be, I'd be guessing if I tried to put spot grades in there at this point. I didn't want to do that.
Right, and when you're widening this road from 9 feet to 16 feet, how much fill is being brought in to bring the road up to the access drive to the same height as the existing access drive? Is it 6 inches? Is it 3 inches? I have no way of knowing.
Right, I think if you look at the, there's the road cross section on sheet 8.01. So it would be, you would be removing some of the top material and replacing it with the material that would be specified.
No, I understand that, but the existing access drive that's there now is elevated above the wetlands on either side of it. And that road is on, that drive is only, access drive is only 9 feet wide and you're going to 16 feet wide. So 7 feet off that existing cart path, you have to raise the grade to get it up to the grade of the cart path. And I'm asking how much fill that is to take to get there, and I can't tell from this plan.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, I can provide you with a calculation for that based off of what we have for an existing base plan and what they, but again, yeah, I see where you're going. Yeah, it's a little, again, to be able to give you accurate numbers, I would have, yeah, I see where you're going with that. I understand your concern there.
Yeah, so basically that was all I had. Again, I haven't finished, but I think at this point, I'm gonna be looking for them to analyze that vernal pool as a pond in their drainage, because they're sending all that water from AP3 or watershed 3 to an analysis point there. And I may want to look at it as a pond to see if it does overtop the road in a large storm event.
Can I just real quick, part of the reason why we didn't, that wetland was not analyzed is because, again, I didn't want to make guesses. By having the data that I have survey wise, if I was to analyze that as a pond, I would be guessing in terms of the elevations, et cetera. So we wanted to try to hew more towards the existing approved plans. So.
Well, this is why I asked back in December. They've had 6 months to get this information, and now they're saying in the instance of time, they're in a hurry and they want to get moving, but in 6 months, they haven't done what I asked for in December. So this is why I'm a little
I got a question about this area you're referring to as a pond. Is there currently water there?
I have not been to the site since we did our site walk. I don't know.
Well, we all know there's a big difference between basins and ponds, so I hope that's clarified. And when we talk about basins, at least in Dayton, as we define them, we have detention, retention, and infiltration. Obviously, we strongly urge infiltration, but if there's going to be water hanging around for any length of time, we want to know that ahead of time. And if the water is going to be there and it's a pond, it's not a drainage basin. So that should be clarified. And if in fact it is some kind of a basin that might hold water temporarily, we need to know how fast it's going to drain, because we don't want to have, if it's not a pond, we don't want to create more surface water that's going to hang around and stagnate and be there long enough to grow mosquitoes. So
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Are you still referring to the area of the crossing, or are you referring to the proposed stormwater BMPs?
I'm hearing something about a lot of 500 and some odd thousand gallons of water going into a potential vernal pool, and I'm saying that's not a pool. How about my question is, where all this water is going to go, is it going to be a pond, a lake, a puddle, a basin? Sometimes terms are used interchangeably, and I'm trying to figure this out. So
yeah, no, I understand. Well, if Todd was referring to our proposed infiltration basin in the southwest corner, then it is a basin.
Chris, I don't think that's what we're talking about here. If I can
sorry.
Bridge the gap. Yeah, no, I think it's the way that pond has been used to describe the vernal pool area. So
okay.
We have the existing vernal pool, which has the 500 some odd thousand gallons of water that Todd referenced. There was a request raised about whether that needs to be evaluated as a pond and whether it overtops the road during storm events.
Yes.
And so
yes.
I think in that conversation, the word pond was maybe used interchangeably with vernal pool in that instance. So
yeah, he's referring to that southern piece of wetland in which is contained a vernal pool. Yeah.
I'm referring to analysis point 3, which is effectively the vernal pool. I called it a pond because when you model this in the drainage, it's a pond is the node you use to describe it. So when I said pond, I wasn't referring to it as a pond. It's technically the vernal pool. It's just how to analyze it as a closed basin that will overtop at some point. And that's why I wanted to know, is it going to overtop the road when you dump 500,000 gallons of water? That's what I was.
Yes, no, I understood that, yes.
It's not a pond, it's a vernal pool.
Okay. Mr. Agia, do you have anything?
I do. Hi, James Agia, building commissioner. So it's been a crazy day, crazy week, but I did look at your email, and I'm a pretty good speed reader, so I think what I understand is that you want to extend the narrow width that was graciously allowed by the fire chief to a total length of about 400 feet, which would bring 200 feet in either direction from the vernal pool on the access drive. Is that correct?
We wanted to see if that was the chief would be open to as it impacts the specifics of the request that we're making of the Conservation Commission. Yes.
Okay. So obviously I'm going to meet with the chief in person on this to discuss it in detail. I will tell you that in a preliminary, just quick conversation with him, there's a concern because of the proximity to the second array that by narrowing the width of that amount of distance, we're going to reduce the amount of stacking that's allowed for emergency vehicles if he needs to respond to the second array. So, 20 feet is NFPA, we all know. He allowed 16 for a short distance to get through the wetland area. Now we're talking about, almost 400 feet. And if he needs to bring multiple vehicles into this array, then are we going to be able to get personnel off the vehicles on a 16-foot wide area without them hurting, injuring themselves, or even worse, getting, terminally hurt? So We're still gonna work on that. I'll email you something from the chief and I, giving you specificities of what we come up with. But I'm letting you know that we're a little bit reluctant at this point, just from a, looking at it quickly and giving you some direction of which way it might go, okay?
Yep, and that's appreciated. Just looking for that clarification. So yeah, thank you for having the conversation and letting us know.
Mr. Ryan, do you have anything?
I just have one quick question. When was the original survey done on that property? And why was there such a gap in time frame from a survey done, say, 5 to 7 years ago to no survey being done presently?
It's not that there's no survey, they just relied on that survey. So Meridian is using the survey from the last company that didn't do a survey, they relied on somebody else before that.
So they're using that survey to rely on all the benchmarks.
Yes, and from what I can tell, it's an aerial survey that was done, it was not an actual on-ground survey. But that's just my speculation based on what I'm seeing. And so they're asking that they can go in and just shoot the grades of the road, let them for what they are, do all the work, and when they're done, as long as that grade didn't come any higher. So that's effectively what it was. But they were in there doing a survey relocation of the wetland flags, and they were at the same location.
Was that a gamble that we want them to take?
Well, that's what they're asking here, so.
You have anything, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking just in real time here. I can't get you a certain answer on the survey specifics on the fly here, but we can follow up with a clarification unless Tim or Tom from TRC knows, we can revert with that clarification. But yeah, the approach described in terms of shooting the existing grades prior to construction and ensuring that the as-built grades match that same elevation is the approach that we're proposing here.
I mean, as long as it's done before they actually start any work, I'm okay with it. As long as we know what those grades are before they start wrecking the road, because once they touch that road, we're never going to know what it was. And that's going to be one of the first things they're going to do is wreck that road. So.
Mr. Ferry? Mr. Mullen?
No, I don't have it.
Mr. Burnett? Okay, Dan, we're going back to the email. First of all, we had asked for this, we discussed this as far as hours of operation when we had that meeting to talk about public safety. And I will mention that Police Chief Robert McDonald has joined the meeting. We have been looking for information, hopefully by May the 11th. This actually came in to me yesterday, and the chief got it late this morning. So obviously he hasn't really had a chance to go through it and discuss it with any town officials, or even to figure out the logistics of what it is you're planning relative to construction traffic. So I don't think we're going to get anything resolved about this today. I guess one of my first questions is, I asked about hours at the last meeting, and I was told that wasn't going to work. Now I'm looking at a schedule of 7 to 9 in some places and 7 to 10 in others for entrance of vehicles. And I'm looking at 4 in the afternoon for exiting of vehicles. But I'm also seeing schedules that might mean trucks as early as leaving as early as 3 p.m. or I'm looking at all these times and things. So my question is, first of all, what changed? Because nobody really wanted to discuss what I had brought up about hours of operation. What has changed that now the schedule has appeared?
Yeah, and maybe this was a point of confusion. I thought that we had discussed the preference for early morning deliveries. And so, understanding that this came across late and then you guys have had limited time to look at it again, apologies for that. We've had to marshal, competing resources for things that we're going through here, and felt like this was a conversation that was happening in parallel to the stormwater committee, not necessarily as a gating item. So apologies for that. But we had taken as a takeaway of that meeting that the town's preference was to limit deliveries to the maximum extent possible to that 7 to 10 a.m. window. So we went back to our contractor and their subcontractors to determine the extent to which that was possible. And for the majority of the large delivery trucks, it was determined that we can restrict the entry and exit of those vehicles to 7 to 9 or 7 to 10 a.m., depending on the contractor. And that, we would be able to provide escort vehicles and other safety provisions for those. And that for vehicles that can't reasonably be restricted to those time periods, that we would be bringing in and coordinate police detail for 100% of those deliveries. So yeah, maybe it was just a disconnect coming out of that meeting, but what we provided, the intention was to try and capture that goal.
Okay, again, I'm seeing conflicts of time, 7 to 9. I mean, first of all, I'm glad a schedule has been drafted. 7 to, since Mr. Arujo had said that the stand opens, I believe, at 10, and that's when the hordes start coming in. Literally, if you have driven anywhere near that section of Dayton, and he did say May was the busy month, they're parking on the sides of the road, the parking lots are full and everything else. So I'm glad to see there's a schedule. However, within the schedule, I'm seeing 7 to 9, and if the stand opens, the farm stand opens at 10, that's good, because even if trucks are late, hopefully they're not going to be driving through there at 10 in the morning. But I see other sections where I'm seeing 7 to 10. I saw that exiting would be 4 and on, and then I see more schedules. I think the schedule needs to be better clarified. 7 to 9 is a good morning time. I think when you get up to 10 o'clock in the morning, I think you're really getting to the edgy part of our concerns about public safety. They close at 5 in the afternoon. So I would think that unless it's a really important holiday, like we just had Mother's Day, when they're there from dawn to dusk, it seems, I mean, customers, that is, that 4 in the afternoon later in the summer, that might work because they close at 5 and things should be winding down. But again, I think we need more detail, and you really need to take a look at those 10 o'clock times you got here, because I still have concerns about it. I still have concerns about the whole thing, driving through 2 parking lots in one of the busiest seasonal businesses in town. However, we're willing to look at that. We're going to need more time to go over this whole thing. As I said, the chief got it a couple of hours ago, roughly, maybe 3 hours ago, and I'm sure he hasn't had time to sit down and go over it. What you described as the trucks and all of that, I understand that, but I would ask whoever put this together to go back and look at the times, especially the morning times. Those are serious concerns. I am going to ask the chief to speak in a little bit, but something else I want to point out that I have concerns about. The areas, or the times, I should say, when police details will be present, and whether or not it says police escort plan, ? So they aren't escorts, they're details. But I thought we made it clear at the last meeting that the need for police details will be determined with conversations between somebody from your company and the police chief, or at least his representative. Again, with the Stormwater Committee, we raised the issues because this is all part of what we saw on the plan that was of concern. And certainly, we aren't going to make a decision on when police details are required. But by the same token, I'm not going to accept this list saying, well, if this happens or that happens. That should all be worked out with the chief of police or his representative. And there should be a definite plan in place so that ahead of time, they will have details available. And also, with most of these solar farm projects, we sort of have a standing unwritten rule in town. If the police chief visits the site, even randomly, and he feels there should be coverage, he has the right to stop the work and get a detail out there for safety concerns. Now, that doesn't happen very often because if you plan ahead, there's no need to do it. But I think that's also something that needs to be very clear. You need to set up a schedule ahead of time for public safety, but you've got to understand if the situation arises and the decision is made by the chief or his sergeant or whoever may be there, it's going to happen and work will stop until the detail is there. So whatever is brought up on this schedule, that clause is going to be in there. So I just want you to know that. And that's not a stormwater regulation. That's just something that the common sense the town would do for any type of not only construction, if there were an event going on in town. So just something we want to point out to you. Chief McDonald, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, just Mrs. Goulart said, she was making comments about the safety up there. It is a very busy place up there. And there are times they are parked on the side of the road. The parking lots are full. They have 2 parking lots. So where you're talking about where this entrance is going to be, you're going to have somebody there for sure. And I haven't seen this thing yet, but I'll be reading it. But I see the time she mentioned, like 7 to 9, and maybe come back at 4. I'm going to have to sit down with you guys. And the details how they work is 4 hours. They could be there an hour. They could get, it's a minimum 4 hours. Or if you call that morning for a detail, and you only want them there for an hour or 2, you have to pay them 8 hours. So we're gonna have to get you a thing how the details work, how they get paid. Another issue, school buses. That road is well traveled. There's a lot of cars that are on that street. There's a lot of buses in the morning that go down there for high school, middle school, elementary. Same thing in the afternoon. So we need to have some officers there at times when you guys are there. So maybe we can get together. I'll view that first, and then we can maybe sit down, or I can give you a call. We can talk about how this will work.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's all consistent, especially with the logistics of the detail timeframes and kind of, minimum timeframes and what you're signing up for and what you're paying for. That's all consistent with our understanding. So no surprises there. In terms of adding a condition that, Chief, it's in your right to come inspect the site at any time and require detail be summoned, totally fine. And that's exactly the type of feedback that we were seeking. I did just want to make one clarification on the time windows that will hopefully help in your review. So the first table was meant at kind of what the expected delivery cadence looks like. And then the second table and conditions were meant to try and take that expectation of schedule and memorialize it in enforceable conditions. So if we're expecting deliveries at 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., for example, having a condition that requires those trucks to be out by 10 a.m. Ms. Goulart, as you alluded to, it gives the truck a chance to be 5 minutes late, drop off all its stuff and leave and still be gone by 10. And so that was the intention there. I'm sorry for the confusion around the inconsistency, or maybe it wasn't explained appropriately, but that was the goal there, was to kind of set 10 a.m. as the cutoff that, the big truck's got to be gone by, and that there may be 1 or 2 delivery cadences prior to that cutoff. And then the delivery windows in the afternoon, that's something that we're more than happy to discuss with you, Chief, and with other members of the town. to make sure that those are being structured in an appropriate way. There are a few of those that are going to be extremely difficult to limit solely to the 7 to 10 a.m. window. So those are the ones where we were hoping to work with your department to get detail out there, make sure that all the proper precautions are in place, so that on those limited days where we are seeing more truck traffic, that all of the proper protections are in place there. So hopefully that framing helps in your review. More than happy to come sit down in person or get on the phone with members of our construction team to talk through the actual logistics there, and make sure that we're all on the same page and that everybody feels good about the safety plan.
Okay, I think, if you focus on 7 to 9, and if there are some exceptions for whatever reason, they're exceptions and they don't become part of a practice. And as I said, Stormwater Committee doesn't enforce traffic rules, regulations, and anything about that. But because of the nature of this project and it's I'll call it unique access, that's why this all arose. I understand about delivery and all that, but back when we talked almost 2 months ago, and we talked about this, and I mentioned scheduling, I referred to the big construction project that's sort of behind the building we're in, and that's at the Aggie School. Probably the largest construction project in this town in many, many years. And they also had lots of truck traffic and deliveries and you name it. They also have had students on campus, and obviously major concerns about foot traffic and conducting classes indoors and outdoors and everything else related to that. They've been able to pull it off. So that's why I think that what you're talking about now and what we had originally discussed, I'm sure it can be done. I will say this much, that every month, later on the agenda today, we'll be getting an update on the Aggie School. And for the size of that project and the fact that there are over 400 students and faculty and everybody else over there, it's gone very well. So I'm sure that similar accommodations can be made on this project, and how people will, how customers will be ensured of their safety as they walk back and forth across this access drive up to where you're actually going to be doing construction. Does anybody else have anything? You understand what Mr. Pilling's looking for. You understand what the chief has mentioned. And once he has a chance to look at this, he's probably going to want to talk to somebody about it. You understand the requirements about it. It will be the chief who determines, outside of a set schedule of details, what else will be needed. Obviously, you're going to be working with conservation. So is there anything else that anyone wants to bring up? Mr. Pilling.
When I have on the agenda, 5D is to establish timelines for receipt of relevant project documents. We can't get stuff 48 hours prior to the meeting and expect us to be dealing with it by the meeting. So I would like some kind of acknowledgement that any future stuff is going to be in like 2 weeks or whatever ahead of a meeting, so that we can get this done. I know we haven't talked about a timeline yet for this board, but
I think we should just relay the information to the solar farms principals after we vote later on in the meeting, and tell them exactly what's expected of them.
Okay, so just to give you a heads up, Dan, you can certainly stay on and listen to our meeting. It's an open public meeting and you can hear the discussion on that. But quite frankly, when I got these emails yesterday, I'm up to my eyeballs with pilot agreements on solar farms right now in preparation for town meeting. And needless to say, they're taking priority because town meeting is less than 5 working days away now. So this is something we will be talking about later, and you're welcome to stay on to listen to the discussion. Mr. Aguirre.
One other thing of clarification, which is actually very important, based on the context of your email, I want to move forward, try and get some permitting. It was discussed in the past that you are required to have 2 separate building permits for this project. That's not a town of Dayton issue, that is a Commonwealth regulation. You have 2 separate properties, each building permit is issued to a specific property. So you'll have 2 permits. Obviously, all the support documents are interchangeable for this one project, but I do need 2 separate building permit applications, 1 for each parcel, okay?
Hey,
Yeah,
while
understood.
we're on that, when the time comes that we go to draft our stormwater permits here, they pay 1 fee for the whole project, but because we're issuing 2 permits, I'd like to know the acres of disturbance on each lot so that we can break the fee up accordingly to issue 2 separate stormwater permits.
You get that, Dan?
Yep, understood.
And I'll add 2 more conditions. If the proponents of this, of these 2 solar properties that abut one another are going to request pilot agreements with the town of Dayton, it will be 2 separate pilot agreements. We have a boilerplate, which basically requires the applicant to just fill in the information that relates to their project. And they are separate and distinct. And if in fact this is what they want, there will be 2 separate warrant articles at the town meeting. They will be 2 separate votes of the people who attend those meetings. So I'm chasing paperwork now for pilot agreements that are coming up in in 5 working days. So if you just let somebody know, if they're going to ask the town of Dayton for pilot agreements, the sooner the better that they get in touch with me, because I can get them the draft boilerplate and they can fill in the blanks. So that'll be helpful. Then we'll just talk about the terms, meaning 15 years, 20 years, and the amount of taxes we're talking about.
Yep. Yeah, I'll pass that on to the folks that are working on that side.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have anything? So I think we're going to have to continue this hearing.
When's the next conservation meeting that they might be on for?
June 17th, we subdivision, and a dozen other items. I doubt we want to meet past 11 p.m. again. So June 17th would be out. The next meeting after that would be the 3rd Thursday in July.
Whoa.
The 15th, unless the commission.
Yeah, you got a lot on your agendas, a lot of big stuff. You might want to consider having a meeting you have a lot of big stuff on your agendas. You may want to start meeting every couple of weeks till you get past this big hump of paperwork,
So if you have 2 meetings in June, would you look at, instead of the 17th, would you look at June the 10th and the 24th?
We already told the major subdivisions that they couldn't meet sooner than the 17th. So for us to tell Clearway that don't have an application before us that they couldn't be here. So we could have a meeting after the 17th, maybe the week later or something.
Well, the 24th is the next one, so that's what we need to know. Because the other thing too is, we're going to set some meeting dates for the Stormwater Committee. And if the Concom is going to be taking action, we'd like to know what happened at the meeting on the 17th so that we're all on the same page.
I can't schedule, Lisa and I can't schedule a meeting without the rest of the commission.
No, I know that. But
In order for them to make that decision, we have to be in a meeting.
what?
In order to schedule a meeting, they
Yes.
have to be in a meeting. So
Yes.
the next meeting, they could talk about scheduling additional meetings.
By the same token, I may be looking to schedule a special meeting that we may not get to today because of some other things that are coming up, other situations we're dealing with. And what I would do is ask Roz to send out an email and say, we need a special meeting, who is available? And then we would post it. I don't need a committee vote to call a meeting, especially if it's other than the normal meeting, which, as I said, but the main thing is, it's really going to depend on what's happening. So it would seem that you could check on the availability of Concom members.
You can't continue to a date uncertain, but you wouldn't be scheduling a new hearing for this new date if you chose to. It would just be new hearing, so I guess you could get away with it. Yeah. You just couldn't talk about something you discussed at the last meeting.
I mean,
That makes sense.
almost all boards have had to say, we need another meeting other than our regular. Who can make it? And so you're not violating anything. Okay, I think the main thing is you need to see if you can come up with another date in June. Now, originally, what came in here said they wanted to be starting in July. Well, if they don't meet, if you can't meet until July, there's another problem here. By the same token, if you've got big projects and they're backing up one to another, that's not good either. Okay? No, I understand.
It would be good if they could get their ducks in a row, so we wouldn't have to juggle.
No, I understand that. Is there anything else relative to this project? I'll call it the Arujo project. All right, so we need to continue this hearing.
So future date.
So right now, the next Concom meeting is June
17th?
All right. So the Thursday after that, or the Wednesday, would be the 23rd or the 24th of June.
So it doesn't have to be on a Thursday. I mean, you know, I'll talk with the rest of the commission.
No, I'm talking about Stormwater Committee now, okay? But you're on for the 17th of June, so we would meet the following week, I would hope. Today's Wednesday. A week from your meeting would be the 24th. So does anyone on the Stormwater Committee have a preference relative to the 23rd or the 24th of June for our next regular meeting?
So I'm pretty positive we're going to be able to fit that on meeting for the 17th. So we have to make a meeting the following week. So could you make your meeting like the day after, or maybe?
Day after is a Friday. That ain't gonna happen. All right, let's go back to the Stormwater Committee right now. How is the 17th of June? It's a Thursday for Stormwater Committee people. This would be our regular monthly Stormwater meeting. June 17th, 1 o'clock.
I'm supposed to be leaving for vacation that afternoon.
Oh, that's not good. How about the 16th?
And Roz is on vacation, so Roz is on vacation that week. So.
Oh, all right. Then we are in the week of when are you back?
I'll be back Sunday.
Someday?
Sunday. Yeah, so a lot of people are trying to burn a lot of vacation by the end of June.
No, I understand. All right, so we're the following week. So would the 23rd, the Wednesday or the 24th be better for Stormwater Committee members?
Does work?
We do have a Board of Health meeting tonight.
Possibly.
Okay, so.
Would you like a motion to continue this?
Let's establish the meeting date of June 24th, and then we'll do the continuation vote, okay? So is there a motion to set the next regular Stormwater Committee meeting for June 24th, 1 p.m. here?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing Hearing none, all in favor? Mr. Burnett?
Aye.
Mr. Pilling?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Mr. Rhines?
Aye.
Mr. Ferry?
Aye.
Mrs. Goulart? Aye. We're going to meet at 1 PM on the 24th. Now, is there a motion to continue this hearing till June the 24th?
So,
At what time?
1:30 PM, sorry.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none? You can't. Mr. Pilling?
Aye.
Mr. Burnett? Mr. Aguirre? Mr. Rhines?
Aye.
Mr. Ferry? Mrs. Goulart? Aye. All right, so you all set, Dan? June 24th, 1:30.
We'll see you all on the 24th and we'll be in touch well before then. Promise.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'm going to leave it up to you to get, whoever from your committee, your company, get in touch with Chief McDonald to work out the details of the public safety issues so that when we meet on June 24th, it'll just be a progress report that's hopefully going to say we're all set.
Yep, we'll take that on.
Okay, thank you. I know we have some abutters here. Does anyone wish to speak or say anything about anything you've heard? This doesn't really affect yours anyhow, but public input is public input. So, okay. Okay, next agenda item, 5C, review, discuss, act, Maris Lane, conditions of stormwater permit.
All right, so Maris Lane, they filed for a stormwater permit because, oops.
Is this for the last few houses they want to build? Or what?
Yeah. So, yeah, they filed for stormwater permit because they were doing more than 1 acre total disturbance because they have 5 lots they're going to be building now, the person that's taken over the project. As a result, we asked them to file a stormwater permit. They did. And so we need to issue the stormwater permit, and I came up with some conditions based on our other conditions, but I wanted the board to say yes, they're okay with it before we issued the stormwater permit. And unfortunately, I thought I made double-sided, but they were single-sided, so Ross is running them off now. So, but the conditions were pretty standard, but one of the ones we got to talk about is the maintenance bond. Now, out on that road, all they have is that one drainage basin in the back. I know there's some culverts running under the road, but what do we want to ask for, like $5 grand?
Do we know if there's an HOA on that project?
It's right here, and it's more than just a basin, and 500, but great assessment between the houses.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that behind the house. They had to add that in
There's
too.
a way for this one.
So Tom, Mr. Pyrus was on the planning board at the time.
There is a piece of property to the east of the existing.
You got to speak up for the microphone. When your mask is open here.
There is a, anybody on? There is a property that was given to the town and developed for preservation and nature, so forth, so on. That was done probably how long ago? Well, actually, when it was first developed years ago. So the status of it still remains the same. That's pretty much what I remember about the project and that being there. But as far as a developed nature walkway or anything, I don't think they've done anything with the property, so. Well, what I know.
So whether there's an HOA or not, I think the bond amount would still be the same.
So I have it listed as Woods Homeowners Associated Trust. current stormwater construction, the lot that contains stormwater construction is owned by homeowners associated trust. So I would have to concur with Mr. Ferry that there is going to be an HOA. So the question now is, if there's an HOA, do we need to require a maintenance bond? And if we are, we need to be consistent in the future on any future subdivisions that we require maintenance bond when an HOA is involved. That's something we haven't done in the past.
Well, what if the HOA doesn't do the work? Then what happens?
That's why I bring it up. It's maybe something that we want to pursue. We just haven't done it in the past. Doesn't mean that we can't start.
We discussed it in the past, we haven't moved on. We've experienced residents claiming they don't know they don't need to wait for it.
Has the HOA been established 2 years ago? There was up in the air about the HOA
So
being inactive. Who the owner, the developer, had sole responsibility at the time for it. So I don't know if the HOA has been established yet.
That was the first development, Tom, I believe, and I don't think it was at that time. It was changed ownership, so I don't believe that those standards have been met by anyone right now.
So the HOA can still be established, but managed by the developer until such time that the project is going to be turned over. At that time, the HOA would then vote for offices of the HOA, which are typically residents, but this subdivision hasn't gotten that far yet. So the HOA is more than likely established, but still operated by the developer,
The new owner,
the new owner.
so the person who's going to, or is proposing 5 houses is
Yes.
responsible for the whole thing now?
Correct. And I will go on record as saying this developer has been very forthright and has done everything that's been asked of them. It isn't like times in the past where we've had issues out there.
Is he just, we're talking about, what's his name? The developer.
Well, there's a few investors out there.
Well, I know, but last when I knew, he was just a builder and not the owner of the subdivision.
Right. That's the same people, there are 3 people involved. There's one who's the main investor, the builder has an interest, and there's also another person.
Yeah, because that was very confusing. If you recall.
But I will tell you, the relationship with them has been good.
Right.
Mr. Pilling, do you have more things you want to talk about as far as the stormwater permit?
No, like I say, you can see now that Ross handed it up, we've got the 5 conditions that I was thinking of. Obviously, they're pretty much the same as we do for everybody, and I know Dan is still watching here from Clearway, so these would be similar to him. Installing erosion control, providing a SWIP, providing drainage as-built plans before the road gets accepted, or obviously before a solar farm activates. Operation and maintenance during the report, and reports coming to us annually. I mean, it's pretty standard stuff. The only thing would be the bond amount, which changes based on how much is out there. So I personally think even if there's an HOA, there's a possibility that the town may have to go in and do some work. So I think the bond still needs to be inspected, personally. And the amount I got here, the 5,000, obviously if there's more than a basin, we got the thing behind and the culvert, it should probably be more like 10.
Mr. Ferry?
I have a question, Mr. Barry. I actually agree with that statement by the utility. I think there's a lot more infrastructure here than just the basins. You and I both know how much infrastructure is out there. So I think a different number needs to be put in play for the bond amount. Sorry? We're not going to make up a number, but we have at least 300 feet of subterranean piping that drains off 2 of the lots. So that could become impacted, may need to be cleaned. I think we should include that in our maintenance bond amount.
Whether it's a HOA or not.
Yeah, because I think, as Mr. Billy said, if the HOA may not be fully understanding of what they need to do. It's not great in this subdivision.
So if the town requires the bond, if we have to do anything, we've got some money to pay for it. If we require the bond and the HOA eventually takes over and is responsible, then we may be able to release that bond. Is that true?
I would recommend releasing it. I would hold it and make it part of the HOA documents that we're holding that bond.
Okay,
Because if the HOA defaults and doesn't do what they're supposed to, which needs to be included in our annual reporting, which is
Right.
why we're doing all this.
yeah,
Then I think through notification, we'll have a standard notification process. And once that notification process lapses, then we need to exercise the bond and get the maintenance done.
okay. If in fact, whatever the amount of the bond is, gets used up or gets close to being used up, who do we go to replenish that?
Whoever's in control of the HOA.
And if it hasn't been turned over to the HOA, it's the whoever, okay. All right, okay.
It's a good question. I don't see that happening while the developer's still in control because there are other mechanisms in place, such as cleaning your basement or you're not getting a building permit, or an occupancy permit. So there's other mechanisms that we have to make sure the developer conforms. But it's a good question.
It's not part of the 53.
No.
When we call.
Right. Maintenance bond.
It'll be a special account with the name of somehow Maris Lane attached to it. Because we don't use that 53G thing, that's for consultants only. So it'll be a special account identified on the town's books. Excuse me. Just like we do for, thank you, I got this. Just like we do for all those other bonds that we require. So, is there a motion to issue the stormwater permit based on
Well,
the,
do we pick an amount? Did we agree on that? As I said, I got a placeholder for it, and while I'm sitting here, I'm realizing that they have silt stacks in the catch basins and the roadways, so I think we need to throw in there that they need to be cleaning those out, and street sweeping twice a year until the town accepts the road.
Well, we always do it once, correct?
You know, it's so first year makes no sense. And you don't know if the town banks are true.
True.
Okay, so twice a year makes sense. Do you think an additional $2,500 for that underground piping that runs behind all those houses? Is that adequate?
No, they go with that for road. Getting the 10,000 because it's all inclusive to get erosion problem that based on that. They just quit it going on.
So then we bring the total up to 10,000?
Is everybody okay with 10,000?
I think that's what should be moved and then we'll vote on it.
is there a motion?
I'll make that motion to approve the stormwater permit for Maris Lane, owned by Maris Lane Development Corp., with the conditions as discussed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. Mr. Pilling.
Aye.
Mr. Pius.
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre. Mr. Rhines.
Aye.
Mr. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Burnett.
Aye.
Mrs. Goulart, aye. Agenda item 5D, establish timelines for receipt of relevant project documents. Mr. Pilling.
Well, I won't go too deep. We all know 48 hours isn't enough time. I mean, 2 weeks would be ideal. We could probably get away with like 1 week or something like that. But 2 weeks makes a lot more sense so we can disseminate the information to everybody and people can weigh in on it and we can have, guests that we invite here to have their, say on it. So I like 2 weeks.
Should we say weeks or should we say so many working days? Because weeks have holidays.
Well, our working days are different than most people's working days here too. So.
But that's why I'm saying, if it'll be the working days of the town, all right?
4 working days.
It's supposed a lot.
Probably be 3 weeks, 8 working days.
8 working days.
Are you accepting motions?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we require all plans or related documents to be submitted to the stormwater committee 8 working days prior to our scheduled meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion.
Should there be any state permission that come up, whether it is, and any kinds of stuff?
I think we could vote on that after the meeting. Receive them in less time.
We can always vote to waive that requirement or whatever. Okay?
Or if they get us part of it, but the rest of it, they're still waiting on or something. So yeah, I think 8 working days is good. And those 8, let's insert the word town working days. Yes.
So Monday to Thursday, you're not counting holidays.
And again, if anybody needs a little more time, but if they wait 8 days and we don't even get anything, that's a whole nother story. Any further discussion? Mr. Pius?
Some departments work every week. Town hall. Monday night.
But I would say for the most part, if it's something that relates to Stormwater Committee and the members on it, the majority work the 4-day. And I wouldn't want to add days when they're supposed to be doing this and in effect for the departments that work 5 days, I would hope it would give them a day that they wouldn't have to deal with these kinds of issues.
So, you know, you said that, you set a time at the end of that, say, you know, like 8 days, no later than 5 p.m. is the final day, and because, you know. Yeah.
Again, it's a policy right now, so we can start with something and see how it works. Good start.
8 town working days, meaning, excuse me.
Stormwater.
Way friendly amendment, Mr. Agia.
Sure.
8 town hall working days. Covers both buildings, where the 4-day work week pretty much kicks in. Did you have that, Ross? Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Pilling.
Aye.
Mr. Pius.
Aye.
Mr. Agia.
Aye.
Mr. Rhines.
Aye.
Mr. Ferry. Mr. Burnett.
Aye.
And Mrs. Goulart, aye. Old business, update on 170 Beach Street.
We have a park scheduled for tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock.
Oh, great. It's that dry?
No, we'll probably be doing a sieve test, but it's dry enough that we can drive a machine on the lawn.
Oh, okay.
We can't wait for it to be dry enough to do a perk test.
Is there anything else on Beach Street?
So,
Mr. Ferry, I know you've got some details.
inquiring on upgrading my drainage system to receive possible water from the Beach Street situation. Approach Conservation Commission for RDA, working within the resource area. And they gave me a negative determination last Thursday night, so tentatively we'll be installing that catch basin intersection in July.
And that's on Pleasant Street, correct?
Correct.
Does anybody have any questions on what Mr. Ferry just reported?
Thank you, everybody, for your effort on this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and Mrs. Grassi, add this, Mrs. Grassi, this will be on the agenda for the next meeting. We'll have an update. And that update will be from both Mr. Ferry and Mr. Pilling. So hopefully this will be behind us. Agenda item 6B, update on Segregated River land disturbance in a wellhead protection zone. Dora Estates, Winthrop Street, Taunton. Who would like to start?
Somebody should speak to me about that.
Well, first of all, just quickly for those that, I think everybody knows this, but in any case, a week ago Monday, a number of individuals from the town of Dayton attended the Conservation Commission, City Hall in Taunton. It was in response to our notification that abutters had not been properly notified as required. So the Concom in Taunton reopened the hearing that was actually over last fall, November, whatever it was. And Mr. Pilling prepared a 3-page letter outlining all of the problems that we were concerned about. And also he attached all the supporting documentation, maps and everything else you can think of. And we were able to, first of all, the individual, I won't call him an engineer because I found out he isn't an engineer, who drew the plans, was there with his attorney on behalf of the project owner. And initially it was just my interpretation of his statements were it's stormwater. We can take care of 75% of this. Several of us addressed that specifically as it relates to not notifying the abutters, mainly the main one being the Dayton Water District, the effect it has on wells. We had a letter from Mr. Clunan that was also given to the Conservation Commission in Taunton. And we outlined all of the concerns. The conservation agent and a member of the Conservation Commission admitted they had made many mistakes. We requested a third-party review, which on an initial 3-3 vote, and then the chairman voted and broke the tie so that they said no to a third-party review. But before we left the meeting, I did get the chairman to at least state if all of the issues couldn't be resolved, there will be a third-party review. Whether or not that happens, if necessary, that's another issue. But anyhow, we were allowed to make the presentation. We had, let's see, Mrs. Caldonia, Mr. Pilling, Mr. Rhines, Mr. Hull from the Board of Selectmen, Jim Digits from Concom, Mr. Aguirre. Who else was there? Who am I leaving out? We had, let me put it this way, we had a good contingent there. And thank you very much for everybody that did show up, even if you didn't speak, because anyone that wants to see what happened at that meeting, if you go to Google and type in Taunton Conservation Commission meeting video, skip about the first 30 minutes because there was a case ahead of us, but then you can see the presentation and testimony from the, I'll call it the Dayton contingent. And you will notice that when we are through, we did get a continuance until the next meeting in June, but you'll notice that when we were through with our presentation and got up and left, there were a lot of empty seats there. So Dayton was well represented at that hearing. So Mr. Pilling, do you wish to comment on that meeting?
Rosalind's actually making copies now of the letter so we can answer everybody and the committee can see it. Basically, there were two major faults with the design. Number one is the engineer did not draw on that they were in a zone 2 of our well or within the zone A of the Segregated River. So when he did his design and submitted it to the city looked at it and said everything was fine because it was fine if they weren't in those what they consider an ORW, outstanding resource water. So as soon as they fall into an outstanding resource water, all the water has to be treated to a higher level, and they didn't have any of that treatment. So the engineer is going to have to redesign his drainage system to get better treatment out of the water, and he may lose a lot as a result of it. So their representative, the engineering firm, is supposed to be trying to figure it out and getting in touch with me so we can have a meeting possibly to talk about what he wants to do.
So we're scheduled to go back and we'd meet with the Taunton Concom 6 p.m. on June the 14th. It was interesting that the gentleman who was there representing the owner, the developer, is not an engineer, yet he drew the plans, but he brought his attorney with him. Anyhow, we will be going back on the 14th. There's a lot of work that has to be done. It was left that Mr. Tolman is supposed to iron out, respond to all the questions that Mr. Pilling had in the 3 pages. The water district, we had a meeting with Jeff Clunan earlier today, and they're going to have their engineering firm try to determine if initially there has been any effect on the water supply or the infrastructure relative to the blasting that went on. Blasting that went on without a permit, by the way. We found out about that today, which is not within our bailiwick, but that's just one more thing to add to the list. What I'd say is initially there was more focus on, we got to get this done. It's been out there since last fall and we got to move ahead and so forth and so on. And as I said, the hearing has been continued, so we did accomplish that. And Mike Mullen was there also, and he spoke for the town. And I think I felt good about the meeting in that I think we made a good case. I think we made a good presentation. They paid attention. Again, when the pseudo engineer made the remark about it's just stormwater, we can take care of 75% of that, to which I responded, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the public water supply that supplies most of the people in the that get public water in the town of Dayton. And I explained that a little bit, how we have North Dayton Fire and some people get Somerset water and the rest have wells. But although the Dayton Water District situation, we don't have all the answers for, that's a real big one. So again, Dayton Water District's engineers are going to be taking a look at that. And Jeff is supposed to be giving us something. Hopefully we can get somebody to go to the next meeting in Taunton, but we'll be there. And again, thank you to everybody that did go. You know, sometimes when you're at these public meetings, even if you don't comment, you don't get up and speak, it's nice to see when you practically clear out a room, the amount of support you had there. That was pretty visible, and that's important. One person showing up, I think they kind of ignore it, but several people from our group spoke. And again, just the number of people we had there when we cleared the room, I think very important.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Mr.
I
Ryan.
do have a copy of the Concom's first meeting in regards to Golden States. And this city engineer threw some red flags in that first meeting, and nothing was followed up. So I think that we need to go in with a copy of their first meeting minutes. If we don't get any relief on our next meeting that we attend, then just to let that. We had asked for a third-party engineer to come into it, and they decided to cancel. So if their engineer has missed all of this in the beginning, then maybe there should be a third-party engineer to look at this. So.
Well, the other thing too is the guy they were telling us was the engineer. It's not an engineer. I wish I'd have known that at the meeting, quite frankly, because I would have raised that issue.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't know.
I have a patch for the full year after that was her first case, I guess. She had absolutely no idea what she was at. She was just going back and forth asking,
I think she's looking at timelines to try to time bar us. Good luck with that. Mr. Burnett?
Yes, you had your meeting and you were well represented. What happened?
We got a continuance because.
No, a continuance for the meeting.
For the hearing.
For the hearing. I'm talking, what happened about the project? I went by yesterday and they're going full bore.
Okay, so what happened was when Mr. Mullen contacted DEP and he got back to him, David Johnston, I think it was, is that the name? We asked for a cease and desist. Mr. Johnston got in touch with Taunton officials and the developer, and there was not a cease and desist, but a mutual stop work agreement. So at the meeting, I said, so is the stop work going to continue until the next meeting? Oh, no, see, because we got to get this built and it's been out there long enough and all that rubbish.
Oh, boy.
However, what the chairman said was that the no stop work order would continue on the areas that the DEP said were sensitive.
Like a well?
He was talking about sensitive on that property on the Dayton side of the river. That's what he was talking about. So, yes, so the work is progressing, but they're not supposed to be going anywhere near the sensitive areas that DEP designated.
Did DEP go out there? Did they look at anything?
I asked our circuit rider in Andrew Point to go take a look at it. He's working with the agent, Michelle.
I can't hear you, Lisa.
I asked our circuit rider, Andrew Point, to go out and take a look, and he said he would. I don't know if he has, but he was gonna work with Michelle Racino, the conservation agent, to make sure that they're following all the rules. And same thing, I don't know if you're aware, but on the north side of Winthrop as well, there's a development, same developer. They put that project to a stop. They need water quality certificate and other permits through the state.
So we're going back on June the 14th.
And the project will be almost done by then. They're working 16 hours a day.
No, I don't think so. Well, what I will also say, what I said was, when I got up to the podium, I don't know how many times I went up there. Next time I'm just going to stand at the podium and not sit down. What I said was, we aren't here to stop the project. We are here to protect the water in Dayton and to make sure that the stormwater rules and regs, which we all have to follow. It's not like we got special ones on the Dayton side and they've got others on the Taunton side. The rules are the same, but we want the water to be, the river to be protected. We're not trying to shut this down, but I really focused on the water supply because the pseudo engineer guy says it's stormwater. No, pay attention. And I think definitely the 3 votes we got for the third-party review were really focused on drinking water. The other 3 who said, no, we've got enough engineers. We got this engineer now. We know he wasn't an engineer. And we got Mr. Pilling and we got the city engineer involved. So as I say, that was the 3 no votes, and the chairman broke the tie and he voted no also. But he did make the commitment for a third party. So no, we've still got a strong position, and we will be going back prepared on June 14th. So there are some other things going on that I'm not at liberty to discuss at this point in time, but we're going to do what we have to do to protect the water and the river on the Dayton side. Okay. Main thing was getting back to the hearing, because that was even questionable. We kind of found out about it by accident. Is there anything else relative to this, Mrs. Grassi? This will be on next month's agenda also, please. Anything else on Dora Estates or that whole situation? Not?
Yeah, but I can't say it, no.
Oh, okay, no, you. 6C, Brook Street Solar. Mr. Aguirre.
Sure. So I think most of you are aware, we had mobilization that occurred. They said that they were going to install the culvert. Then the culvert, which was on its way to Carolina, somehow got lost on the way. We don't know where it is. You know where it is?
Hijack.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, big demand for those, right?
Then they came and said, well, can we start work? We said, no, machines disappeared. And we got an email that the sky is falling. We don't know we're gonna get a culvert. Then machines show back up and the culvert's supposed to be delivered today. Did you see a culvert today? No. So we don't know where that culvert is now either.
Because there was supposed to be a police detail waiting too.
Right. Right. So they have a permit, the signs are up. I've had a great dialogue with the contractor. It just doesn't seem like anybody on that side is on the same sheet of music. I'd be curious to hear what Mr. Bosley have to say. But other than that, I can't offer any more. I do not know. They do have a permit. They can construct a culvert, but it seems to be a moving target as to when that's actually going to happen.
So in the meantime, as Mr. Aguirre said, when the mysterious culvert probably never got constructed, so obviously it didn't arrive. They had asked about steel plates, and we reviewed that, and I sent them a list of conditions. Well, when they got that, they decided they didn't like the conditions. So we went the alternate route and allowed them to drop 2 pieces of equipment, but they could not do any work, and they had to put the signs up, as you, Mr. Ferry, had ordered and told them what you wanted done. In the meantime, I got a, I'll call it snotty email from the man I deal with, Ahmed Assad at, he's the man that's in Canada, and quite frankly, he hears from them and they're not telling what's going on here. So I told him what was going on, and forwarded the emails to confirm what has been going on. I haven't heard from him since. I went so far as to find some local precast companies and give those to Robert Thompson, who's the gentleman who tries to solve problems locally. And he told me the one in Berkeley was a 10-week delivery. Well, they may find out 10 weeks is pretty good. And I don't know if he contacted the one in Rehoboth, but I gave him that one. And I also told him I would think you'd be on Google looking for local precast companies. Call them all. But anyhow, it is what it is. If and when that culvert shows up and gets installed, first of all, there's got to be a police detail during that time. Once it's installed, it has to be inspected and approved by Mr. Aguirre and Mr. Ferry and the fire chief, and I forgot who else. I listed a number of people that have to make sure, and the guardrail has to be in also when that culvert is put in. Those were some of the conditions they didn't like, because those are the same conditions that I put on the email about the use of steel plates. But anyhow, we don't know what's happening down there except 2 pieces of equipment the last time I was down there, the day that they dropped the equipment. That's all I saw. Oh, by the way, when I got there in the afternoon, mid-afternoon, there was a vehicle there, and I think the company was, did I tell you Prime? Was that the one I used? I'm not sure now. Prime Media. Anyhow, there was a small pickup truck there, and there was a gentleman with one of those wheels where you measure distance, and he's marking things and all this. And he was there from the utility company, and he's measuring the pole, and there was a big white spot painted on the ground. And I said something about, oh, is that where the pole's gonna go? And he says, I didn't know the pole's gonna move. I said, yeah. I said, I thought you said from the utility company. I am. Which one? Well, actually, National Grid Verizon. I said, I know you're together with poles and stuff. So somebody sent him down there to deal with the guy wire and the poles. But other than that, haven't heard anything. So I am going to send an email because I got another issue to deal with on this company on pilot agreements, because I need it for town meeting. I haven't seen the first draft. So this will be on next month's agenda too. It's continuing. This is like a soap opera serial. We'll keep putting it down. Is there anything else on Brook Street Solar? If not, we'll move on to, yes. Okay, excuse me. Before you speak, Mrs. Caldoni, do you have something?
No, I was.
Oh, all right.
I knew they were here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Did you have anything?
No, I just want to make sure that she comes up and takes the mask off. So,
Oh, if you want to speak into this so you'll be heard.
the mask off so that we do it.
Okay. A couple of concerns is I didn't think that they were supposed to pass the little stream there with the ditch without the culvert. And they've done it twice. Which they went over it. They went over it, which in turn flattened it, which now if water is coming down, it's going to interfere with the natural flow that would be, going down the road.
It isn't completely flat because when I
Not
was,
completely,
when I
but
was there on Friday,
it's
whatever day
definitely
it was.
flat. But it is
It's-
considerably flat.
They asked, when I issued all the memo, the email with all the conditions under which we would allow the steel plates, and they decided they didn't want to deal with that. They did get permission, because I talked to Mr. Aguirre about, what do you call it, track vehicles. So yes, when they go over it, they cause, not completely collapse, but they were given permission to drop 2 pieces of equipment. And that was it. And they put the signs up, but they could not work. And so when I went down there late in the day, there were 2 pieces of equipment there.
That's been twice. They had 2 pieces of equipment in,
All right.
and they were taken out.
Right, that's
And they were
because,
put back in.
yeah, I'm only talking about the latest
one.
episode. They were
Okay.
given permission to go there.
Okay.
It was understood what they were going to do. I had sent an email to Mr. Ferry describing what I saw. And I said, so yes, the ditch appears to be filled in somewhat, but where everything is so dry and powdery, if we get a heavy rain, I think it's going to flush it ahead. It may run over some, but the only intent was drop the equipment. And that's all you're going to be allowed to do. Because as Mr. Aguirre said, the culvert was supposed to be here today.
They have knocked down trees with the equipment.
Since it was
Yeah.
dropped,
Yes.
The first time they dropped off equipment, they thought they would land clear.
right,
So they dropped off additional equipment.
right.
Most of it was to be used for culvert installation.
Okay.
They did drop off a dozer, which I anticipated they thought they were going to start land clearing. So they moved some trees to fit all that equipment off the road.
That was the first
The
time.
first time.
Okay.
They were obviously, through me, told, we're not doing any land clearing. The culvert is going to go in, and then everything transpired about what we discussed. Logistically, you can't put a culvert in from the street side. You have to have the machinery on the other side of the swaleway. So what I see is exactly what I need to see in order for them to put the culvert in. Had the culvert been delivered on time, the culvert would already be in right now, and we'd be moving forward with the actual installation, tree cutting, et cetera, et cetera. None of us here can explain why the culvert isn't here, because the day of our site meeting, it was being loaded on a truck from Carolina and being brought up. Obviously, that didn't happen. So they've now mobilized the second time, as you said, because the culvert was supposed to be dropped off today. That didn't happen the second time. So now, as Selectman Goulart said, we'll email and find out why. If they've now impacted that swale because it is the second time, and now the culvert is not going to be installed, then they may have to do something with that swale with the control of conservation to make sure we don't have any problems if this thing drags out another several weeks. So we are going to address that part.
I didn't see additional trees down when the second
No.
crossing took
It
place.
was taken down there.
Really?
Yeah, it seems like,
There were people
are they
that
going to
were,
move the cable?
Well, if it's to move the guy wires,
Might be for
then
that.
that would be understandable as well.
Might be for that.
I know they're working with Verizon to try and get that guy wire moved, so that's probably why the tree was removed.
and the man that I saw there from the media company or whatever it said on his truck, I got the name at home. He wasn't aware of the pole being moved. He was only talking about the guy wire. And that's when I said to him, look at that big white spot. That must be where the pole's gonna go. And he says, I'm only dealing with the guy wire. So they did have, the utility company had this person down there to do whatever he was doing for them. And so wouldn't it be somebody that the utility company hired to do something to the wire and not the contractor? Okay. Okay,
They'd have to work together.
okay.
Are they moving the pole or are they keeping it and just putting another one?
They're moving poles. I don't think they're moving that corner, which I don't know if that's the one you're referring to, Jim. But that pole, as far as I know, is remaining, but they are going to realign the guy wire. They may set a second pole for the intermediate pole and eliminate the guy wire, and sometimes that happens, but I don't know. That's up to the utility.
Yeah, because if you look up at that, I'll call it the corner pole, without the guy wire, that thing is leaning anyhow because of the way that that square intersection, that square corner, and how those wires come out. But what I would say, Mrs. Beausoleil, if there is equipment working there, if you would just give Mr. Ferry or Mr. Aggie a call and say, I just want to tell you there's this going on, okay? Because, yeah, and if equipment shows up with that, just let us know. Again, when the culvert is going to be installed, there has to be a police detail there. And they've been told ahead of time, make sure you get that ordered. If they don't, with the steel plate rules, I'll call them, they were told you will have a detail there. And if you start work without a detail, you'll be ordered to stop until one shows up. So they've been warned ahead of time. So that's very important, okay? Just so you know that.
I appreciate it.
Okay, do you have anything else?
No, okay, that was, there's supposed to be a 50-foot buffer from our mark in, and right at the beginning, there is not, right at the, when you measure in from our mark into the thing, it's not 50 feet.
The stakes go up the middle of, sort of middle, Audrey Lane. Isn't everything to the right of that?
He's referring to the start, that would be the entrance to the property.
Exactly.
There's no other way of doing it, it's the entrance to the property.
Well, I thought it was a bylaw.
Yeah, you're gonna have the 50-foot buffer just to the right of the entrance, yes.
Well, they're also gonna be replanting a lot of areas, so some of those trees that come down, they're gonna have to be planting after they're done.
That was a planning board requirement, so after the entrance road goes in, it's gonna go in, not straight, but sort of skewed to the right a little bit. Once it goes in and turns, the buffer will be either existing or reestablished prior to us allowing energizing of the array. So it won't happen right away, but it is gonna happen at some point.
Thank you. Mr. Perry, have you been down there?
Yes.
Do you have any concerns about the ditch?
Not at this time. It shows right now, I'm going to the dry season. But it's also, I can say that with the survey of COVID showing up imminently.
Yeah, and the only reason we ask is that I've been by several times, but I don't have time to stake out my pine tree, so just let us know.
I can definitely call you, but I didn't want to bother you.
No, I didn't send you an email. Email's even easier because I can't, I'm like, oh, whatever.
Okay.
Call, I have to be here, I'm not always here, so. Yeah, just letting you know. Thank you.
Is there anything else on Brook Street solar? Hearing none, we'll go on to D, update Borrego solar project on Elm Street. Has anybody been involved with phase 2 of the solar project on Elm Street? The agenda item is Borrego Solar Project Elm Street. So we know that phase 1 has been up and running, working on that pilot agreement, which doesn't affect this committee. So phase 2 is under construction or built or whatever.
So the answer is no. I got no dialogue since the last time we spoke. So, is anyone else?
Nothing since the site.
Right. So maybe this is a prime example because I know that the stormwater agent had concerns about the basins being silted over. Maybe this is a perfect example of us sending them a letter and the committee establishing a timeline for notification about cashing in the maintenance bond and actually doing the work there that we requested them to do. I don't know how else to go about this. If they're not responsive, they're not responsive.
This is phase 2.
Phase 2.
What about phase 1? Is it being maintained? Because Chief McGee had made some remark about the road, I thought.
I don't know if there's been vegetation cutbacks since the growing season just started. I haven't been up there to actually verify, but I know the road was groomed, so I don't know of any problems with access.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Mrs. Grassi, make a note, please. We've got to draft a letter to Borrego about maintenance of basins on phase 2. And also, if you get in touch with Chief McGee and just say to him, we're going to be sending a letter. Do you have any concerns about phase 1 or 2? Anything anything relative to anything that the chief might have, so that we can get a letter off. We get it drafted and we'll ask Mr. Pilling, Mr. Aguirre, Mr. Berry, whoever, take a look at this and let us know if we need to make any changes or whatever. But I know I had spoken to Chief McGee on another subject. For some reason that came up, so I wanted to follow up on it. If he has concerns, we'll include it. Anything else on Borrego? Hearing nothing, we'll move on to E. Update on Bristol Aggie.
So, I have all finalized paperwork for the student commons building. Adele, Mrs. Sands, I'm sorry, Superintendent Sands is going to start using it next week. For anybody who's not seen that building, it's an amazing heavy timber building. The architects did a phenomenal job in the design, orientation. We had a site visit there just before occupancy was allowed with the fire department. We put the building under a full generator load test. It responded very well. I was concerned about the lighting inside because it is a large area, so it may be an area where people would congregate, or will be an area where people congregate. So I had to make sure we had enough lighting. Sometimes this new LED lighting, it doesn't respond the same when the generator backup, but everything worked out well. So that said, the next milestone is the old building, which is Gilbert Hall, and the classrooms, two-story building with graded classrooms. That's undergoing a full renovation. It's bare bones, back down to the day, like the day it was built. The interesting thing is the attic area has some I call them homemade trusses, but they were done by a structural engineer at the turn of the century, which is amazing how these trusses were built.
21st century. So you never took it by.
I did, yeah. It's just an amazing space. And it's nice to see. I mean, I've seen old buildings before, but to be able to have that first-hand look at them and understand how things work in a building, it's pretty neat to actually experience it. But anyway, they have a very, very vigorous schedule going on. They plan on having it done by September of this year. I think that's an unattainable mark. I've relayed that to them. In response, they said, well, will you work with us? And I said, look, I'll work with you as best I can, but I just don't see it happening by September. So, and I've talked to a couple of the members of the trustees, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Has to happen.
Has your grandson's going there?
And a granddaughter.
Wow, that's great.
So in conjunction with that, they are going to be taking down the museum building and another. Yeah, that building's not as old as you think.
I know it's not old.
It's not very old.
Here.
No, I know. It's not an old building. Everyone thinks it's old. It's not. But anyway, in doing so and being blessed with a mouthpiece like I have, I asked what was going to happen with some of the cabinets in the building.
The mouthpiece?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I was told they're all going in the rubbish. So I asked Selectman Goulart to ask Mrs. Sands, Superintendent Sands, if she would really ask the board to donate them to the town. And we now have 5 of those larger ones. And this uniquely shaped smaller cabinet, which is going to house our Boston Post cane, related plaque, and I believe the VSO has something he wants to put in there. Metal on, possibly. So that's in discussion.
I thought that was going to the police station. That was part of the requirements when the family gave it to us.
Let's not get into it now, but.
Yeah, but it still needs to be put in.
Yeah, so anyway, the trustees came through, they were donated to the town, we are now in possession of them, and we're gonna work with the Historical Commission and other parties in town to get those display cases mounted permanently. So the project's moving along very well. I was asked if we wanted anything from the museum itself, structural wise. There's nothing in there that's worth salvaging. There's nothing like the door house next door.
Well, we had asked before we did the cabinets, because there was a question about whether or not any of the lumber could be used
Right.
next door.
And it's not that old, so, it's lumber, but it's not worth damaging. Right, yeah. So yeah, no, the project, as you said earlier, alluded to earlier, you brought us into this 2 or 3 years before I even saw a glimpse of a building permit. And that was obviously, the right thing to do, because we've been part of the process from its inception, and this project has gone extremely smooth on all fronts, so I commend you for that.
They've got the demolition permit for that. That is included in their demo permit.
No, that's separate.
Okay.
Building permits have been issued, but the demolition permit is separate. They're currently going through asbestos abatement, and all of the different parameters that I require for demolition. So I think they have a mid-July demolition date for that.
Oh, okay. So you will be going back there?
Yes.
Well, I just mentioned, not to mention any names, but the grandparent of 2 entering kids would like a piece of wood from that building as a memento. Who shall remain anonymous. All right. Okay. When is the cow barn coming down? Are they starting to build a new barn? The cheese barn, the red and black barn.
No, the cow barn, actually was part of the original plan, was to demolish it. I think they've evolved into trying to save it.
Really?
Yeah, but they haven't made an official decision yet.
Okay.
But the small animals building is gone. Have you
Yes.
noticed that?
Yes.
That's where the new dairy barn is going.
Right.
And for those of you who don't know the plan in detail, this milking facility for the dairy barn is robotic, state of the art. There's only one other in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So it's an amazing facility, and I'm looking forward. Obviously, I've looked at it on paper, but understanding how it works, it's going to be an icon for this area, and especially for this town.
Yeah, so the cows come in and they've got like a barcode on them, and it scans it and determines if they've been there like less than 4 hours. It opens the gate that way and sends it back out to pasture, or opens that way and sends them in to be milked if it's been more than 4 hours. It's crazy.
Right.
Just like you do, Tom, right? Every morning.
Well, you get really excited about this.
It's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool.
I don't know if it's the barcodes or the cows. I'm not sure which one it is.
And we will find
There's also an automatic manure machine that cleans and screeds the floor. It goes into a basin, which we work with them to engineer because there was some concerns with that. Yeah, no, it's really been a very symbiotic relationship. And again, I commend you for bringing us on board early on because it's really helped.
Glad to have you guys on board. So just a question. So the cows that are going to get milked, who is actually going to hook them up to the machines?
Well, I'm told it's all automated.
they train robot.
Right.
Well, I hope they talk to the women involved. I mean, we wouldn't want them rushing in there and looking around saying, what's going on?
I think Tom and I are the only one that ever milked cows by hand.
I have.
But I gotta
Yeah. Tom has,
I gotta watch.
Tom Pius has.
So everyone knows there was a very large viewing window that was placed strategically so that you will be able to witness how the cows are milked once this thing comes online. Of course, through superintendent stands, I'm sure we can schedule a walkthrough and actually see this thing in operation. So.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. A friend of mine that had 71 days said, hey, what's that thing on the side of the new building? What's that? Sundial? I said, no, man, that's your clock. Yeah, I said, take a look at it. It's
Still haven't figured it out yet.
It was engineered great the way to look at it. Really cool.
And I just mentioned, how about the big sign that's on Center Street with the heart? Small town, big heart, then there's the heart with the Aggie thing. Tom, when we were talking about putting flags on Center Street, American flags way back when, Adele had mentioned that they had thought about putting flags or banners on the poles, the new poles on Center Street. So we may be seeing something on Center Street too, as far as, like you see in some of the cities for certain events or whatever. So I'm not sure, but when I saw that big sign, I thought that's probably, a precursor. What about their sign? Where is that gonna go? 'Cause
They actually want to do an LED sign.
Right.
And our bylaws don't allow it right now. So
Okay,
I'm working with the design firm. They're still not sure, so they called me and said, can you set us on the right path for compliance? I said, sure, but you need a sign. You need a final draft of the sign. So they're still working the final draft before they can go for a variance from the Board of Appeals.
because when I saw that sign, I thought, I wonder if that's where they're thinking about putting it, because it would be far enough away from any homes. So if it's on 24/7, there would be no light or anything, but it's in an open area. So I was just wondering what happened there. Okay.
Maybe that's why we saw that sign that you referred to as a test to see if and it does stick out.
Oh,
It
yeah,
does.
yeah, no question about it. Anything else on Aggie?
Just one quick question. Jim, you said they're going into the student common building next week.
Yeah.
Are they gonna be serving food there?
No, they're not opening the kitchen.
Okay, so they haven't reached out to us.
Sorry. I should have mentioned that.
No, well, it's a beautiful building, and I'm guessing parents graduation, they want to be able to have people.
No, the kitchen, although functional, will not be operational.
Makes sense. You don't want to have to put plexiglass everywhere for 3 weeks of school.
Okay, we'll go on to 6F, Audubon bylaw review. I hate to do this because we've done it so many times, but I would like to defer this because we've got to set a special meeting because I got this blurb. MS4 regulatory update, blah, blah, blah. Upcoming deadline to update post-construction bylaws or regulations. And I know, Mr. Ferry, you had looked at our stuff briefly and you thought we were in pretty good shape. But I think we're going to have a workshop meeting to talk about this. We can do Audubon and figure out what we're going to do. Maybe they're connected, or I want to be able to take credit for working with Audubon on our next MS4, but also just because we'll be into June, and the year for MS4 closes the end of June, and then we've got to get ready and submit this thing timely. I think it's by the end of August, whatever. But anyhow, I'm going to ask for a motion to defer update on Audubon until I'll call it the workshop meeting on bylaw and MS4. So is there a motion? Second?
Second.
We got a motion, a second. Any discussion? This is going to be a workshop meeting, and hopefully we won't have to have anything else on the agenda unless there's another. We may be talking about the culvert again for all I know. This day, yeah.
Am I understanding correctly, you want this workshop meeting so we can do something before the end of June?
I basically want to just say, this is something this is supposed to be, we have to post-construction stormwater control is an important part of a comprehensive stormwater program in all communities. Please take time now to plan and ensure the deadline to complete this regulatory update on June 30th, 2021 is met. Post-construction bylaws, we don't have bylaws per se on post-construction. We have a bylaw that's a stormwater bylaw. We got all sorts of regulations. That first of all, I don't see us recommending moving regulations into bylaws and taking it to a town meeting. That's a nightmare. We know the bylaw passed, our regs have been approved and we're operating under them and we haven't had to amend them. So I just want to cover this so that when we do that MS4 report, I mean, I'm comfortable with if in fact we can have a statement that says we don't have post-construction bylaws. All control of post-construction is in the regulations. And we feel we're in compliance. If they say, well, you're gonna turn them into bylaws, well, okay, we'll work on that, but you don't do those instantly. So, so that's what that's about. Is there any discussion on this? If not, I'll call the vote. Mr. Pilling? Mr. Pius? Mr. Agia? Mr. Ryan? Mr. Ferry? Mr. Burnett?
Aye.
Mrs. Goulart? Aye. So Roz, we'll have a special, we're gonna set a date before we leave today for a special workshop meeting. And this is the agenda item, the post-construction bylaw or regulations. And the second item will be MS4. Okay. 6G, update on status of subdivision stormwater structure inventory. Go ahead, Mr. Agia.
I took responsibility for doing the tests for Mount Run with what we came up with. And I just got to get it done. I will tell you though that hopefully at tonight's selectors meeting, they will be appointing local building inspectors to help with the inspections on the field. And if that happens, my intent is to take that opportunity to focus more on things like this that we keep having a table meeting after meeting. It's just not enough hours a day. So hopefully after tonight's selectors meeting, I'll have an extra set of hands to help me on a per year basis. That's a quest that I've been trying to accomplish for the last several years. It looks like it'll happen, come to fruition, and hopefully by the 17th meeting, I can say, yes, I've been out, and let's discuss my findings. Thank you.
Okay, so this will be on the regular agenda. We'll get an update on the June regular meeting, please. 6H, Forest Hills, is anything happening? They
filed with Conservation Commission and they're on our June 17th meeting.
Okay, I know that the last planning board meeting, I tuned in early and they were a no-show. Mr. Rhines, we're talking about status of Forest Hills.
Madam Chairwoman, Forest Hills had asked for a continuance, their engineers were not ready, so we continued that public hearing until June 16th at 6 p.m.
Okay, so that's on for the next regular meeting, Mrs. Grassi. Anything else on Forest Hills? Vicky, Hunter's Hill, anything on that? Anybody know anything what's happening up there?
Yeah. So yeah, they came before us with the old 20-year-old wetland delineation. We asked them to get it reflagged, so they've hired LEC Environmental to do that. They gave us an update at our May 20th meeting saying that they've hired LEC and LEC is flagging it. And we, the commission, are narrowing down our peer review consultant for this.
Okay, so that's on the next agenda for an update, Mrs. Grassi. Correspondence, I don't think we have any. Any public input, all of you public out there?
I've got just a little bit of public input.
Go ahead, Mr. Burnett.
I would like somebody to take a look at 578 Hart Street. It seems though there's a lot more than 1 acre being disturbed over there. My neighbor.
Across the street neighbor, across the street neighbor still.
Yeah, a new construction.
It doesn't have to be 1 acre, it's 35,000 square feet.
Well, it's certainly more than that. Seems like he's moving everything that's in the back to the front. I don't know why. Built up the front.
Well, I will say, I have to go back out to the septic final grading once they finish the septic system, but
They had to bring in a lot of dirt to put around the septic system. They were raising that front yard by a lot of feet in order to keep the septic in the ground. The water's pretty shallow out there. But I haven't been out there to check on it, but he came in this morning looking for a permit to do another job, and the contractor said he was done, but we haven't got the plan from the engineer yet. So I should be going out real soon for that anyway.
Just take a look out back, because the material he's bringing to the front of the building is, he's taking from the back of the building, bringing it to the front, spreading it. And I can't see in the back, but the front is built up, I don't know, 4.5, maybe even 5 feet.
Yeah, for the septic, it should have been more like 6 feet in some places, yeah.
Okay, so Mrs. Grassi, that will be update on 578 Hart Street on the next agenda, the next regular meeting, please. Is there anything else under public input? Not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of April 28th, 2021. This is the pre-construction meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second? Mr. Burnett, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Mr. Pilling?
Aye.
Mr. Pies? Mr. Agia? Mr. Rhines?
Just discussion, I just wanted to just make a comment that anytime I've ever received any minutes of our meetings in the Stormwater Committee, our administrative, our office managers are very diligent getting those out and very thorough. So I don't need any more please, so I will vote aye.
Thank you. Mr. Ferry?
You don't get a vote anyway.
Mr. Burnett?
Aye.
Aye. And Mrs. Goulart, aye. We had some other minutes, but I haven't had a chance to review them because, as I said, I got to do pilot. I got to get my pilot's license, so I'm working on that. A reminder. Do I have to get new shoes for that job? Okay, these boots were made for walking.
One of these days.
They're gonna walk. If I show up with these at the Taunton hearing.
I'll just say this, is that if you're bringing in correspondence from Mrs. Goulart sent out recently, the applicants that the point that made in
And when I sent those, I was not upset. I wrote them and I let things cool because I had to make some edits, okay? So just a reminder, June the 8th, 2021, we have a site visit at 2371 County Street, 11 a.m. This is the former Hillview. This is the report of illegal dumping into what was the old railroad bed. And the attorney for the property owners and for the alleged dumper, whatever, said they wouldn't be able to attend the meeting. And I'm sure that he has probably told his clients that you don't have a leg to stand on. You don't really want to go to this public meeting. So the solution is probably a site visit, and let's just discuss it. And you're going to agree to clean up the mess. Why somebody would pay an attorney on what I think is open and shut, as opposed to clean up the mess, spend the money on cleaning up. So anyhow, we'll all meet there. It's right on County Street, top of the hill, across from the Baptist Church, and there's certainly enough parking there in front of the building. Used to be the old Hillview. Is there anything else to come before the committee today? Anything that we think we want to put on a future agenda that we haven't already talked about? Obviously, we'll have the update. I think I mentioned the update on the Taunton Conservation Commission continued hearing. We'll have that. I will mention at the last meeting, if you remember, Mr. Touch and Mr. O'Leary were here about Horton Street. And they're not, I thought they were coming, that was just information because I thought we were going to have them on the agenda. Obviously, they're not on the agenda, but if you just want to give us an update, Mr. Agia, on where the status is. I don't know if they'll be coming back to us or not, but I just want you to know, we didn't leave them off the agenda intentionally.
don't mind, I'll refer to Mrs. Taladonia, it's still conservation.
Okay.
So I understand that these twice for her.
Yeah, so the last meeting, so basically, they've asked for us to change their culvert, allow for change of the culvert, and then incorporating some of the DEP comments when they had to file with NEPA, file an ENF, basically, because they're in an ORW and they're filling over 5,000 square feet. So one of the comments was, let's see what we can change about the replication area. Because right now, the replication area is going to clear out a huge swath of older growth woodland, upland. And it just didn't make sense to clear out all that forest to create a wetland. So are there any alternatives? In addition to that, and I'm not even sure the applicant has seen it yet, but DEP released their comments and I can send them to everybody. But in a nutshell, they have some work to do. DEP wants an alternatives analysis for the project because I guess one of the things they had said in the ENF filing was they don't have room at the front for the house because there's a 50-foot no-build local regulation. Well, in the meantime, they're going to fill in 11,000 plus square feet of wetlands. So it doesn't seem to make sense to us that they would try to find an alternative. Otherwise, DEP thought maybe there was another access on the northwest corner of the lot. I can summarize this.
If you can just send an email to everybody and attach it, and be sure to include.
I sent it to Ross. Ross can send it out.
Okay, be sure to include Mr. Hull.
Yeah.
And I should have done this in the beginning. Welcome, Mr. Hull. This is he's been trying to figure out what does this stormwater committee do, and so.
Very technical, so we only acknowledge what you said. So now you say the acknowledgement.
He turned dessert.
Yeah, we're gonna get another pizza next time.
I will tell you this, the day I walked in and grabbed the stormwater book that was above the desk where I used to sit, it's there for safekeeping because Roz has one and that's the other one. And I opened it up and there were stickies and there were notes and I went, and Karen and Leanne, they're wondering what is going on. I said, I don't believe it. He wrote in the book. And I said, this is the official book. This can be audited. So anyhow, Leanne made him a full copy. He can draw cartoons. He can do anything he wants. And I took the book home. So take good care of the set you got.
Locked it up.
It was, Lenny. It was. But anyhow, so he's quite fortunate. I even allowed him to come here today, but since he showed an interest, I figured, and I said, oh, you won't be alone. I says, Mike is interested. I says, he's for the TA. He wants to know what's going on. I says, and
So you didn't send Mr. Hall any current emails or anything like that?
yeah, well, he was copied, I believe, on the last couple of emails I sent out. Because as a matter of fact, I blind copied a number of people. I think it was a full board and others. But yeah, you're going to see the one I'm going to send to Ahmed because I got to raise the issue of the certainly the culvert. And I'm going to include the pilot agreement. You sent it. It's not your problem. You sent it to legal. Did they go out of business? Nobody's responded. I think I'm down to 5 days, working days before town meeting. So
it's still amazing to try to wrap your head around the situation. It was told in the plans that had put a culvert in many months ago. And why did they not order it then? And then now they're into a problem.
And the question is, why is it coming from North Carolina when they couldn't
Tom was
deliver
down
it?
there last week. He should have You should have had it put in the truck.
No, Tom told me some names, so I followed up, and Jim gave me a name for told me Rehoboth. I only did Berkeley and Rehoboth. But if it were me and I needed something, forget North Carolina, they let me down. Google, there's tons of places in Massachusetts. There's one site that's got 4 locations. So, okay. So anyhow, I think we're all set. If not,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
second, we got a motion in a second. Mr. Pilling.
Aye.
Mr. Pius. Ag, yeah. Mr. Rhines. Mr. Ferry. He has to think about it.
Aye.
Mrs. Goulart, aye. I just so you know, the reason I